When you think of the greatest enforcer for the Corleone family, you probably think of this guy. But there was a man that rivaled Luca, and could even be argued he exceeded what Luca Brasi did. This is none other than Albert Neri. This is a man that is often overlooked, but had an enormous impact on the family. He performed many crucial missions and tasks that undoubtedly secured the Corleones as the most powerful organization. But with all that said, we still don't know the truth about him, or much about Neri's backstory and its rise throughout the family. There are many questions that still need to be answered about Al Neri, and fortunately, the answers will be uncovered in this video. Let's jump into it. Albert Neri was the son of two Sicilian immigrants who came from a village very close to Corleone. Not much is known about Neri's young days, but when he was 15, his parents died, and he was presumably raised by his older sister. A little later on, Neri pursued a job in law enforcement and became an NYPD officer. This was around the time he married the love of his life, Rita, whom he loved for her innocence and virtue. Within 5 years of joining the NYPD, he became one of the most feared policemen within New York. His favorite weapon on the job was a huge flashlight. He never bothered drawing his gun. It was never necessary. His face, when he was angry, was so brutally menacing, combined with his uniform, that the usual punks he dealt with were so intimidated. One night in Central Park West, he jumped out of the patrol car and lined up 6 punks in black silk jackets, while his partner stayed in the cop car knowing what was about to happen. The boys were going around asking people for cigarettes in a menacing way, and Neri loved to put kids like these in their place. He lined them up one by one, asking their names, letting them all go, but the one Italian boy. He hit him with a crippling blow across the forehead, calling him a disgrace to Italians for giving them a bad name. In some instances, there would be a few unlucky people who wanted to fight Neri. In these cases, he would display his awesome ferocity to beat these guys bloody before putting them in the cop car. They would be charged with assaulting an officer, but their case would have to wait until they got out of the hospital, of course. After a while of working, Al Neri was to be transported to a different area after not giving his precinct sergeant the proper respect. In his new area, residing in the United Nations building, he quickly learned that many of these people had diplomatic immunity. They would park their cars and limousines all over the street with no real respect for police regulations. Neri complained about this to the precinct, but was told to ignore it, and he obliged. But one night, a side street was so packed with cars that it was impassable to get through. It was after midnight when Neri saw this, and in his rage, he grabbed his flashlight from his car and smashed the windows of every single car. In the following days, protests poured into the police station about the damage, and after a week of window smashing, the hard truth emerged about who was responsible. After this incident, Neri was then transferred to Harlem. One Sunday dinner shortly after being transferred again, Al took his wife to see his widowed sister in Brooklyn. During his visit, Neri's sister's son, who was 20, showed insult to his mother. After refusing to make the boy something to eat, the son, Thomas, swore at his mother, saying he would go find food himself. Neri had a fierce protective nature to his sister, and the boy instantly regretted this. After hearing this, Neri pounded on the kid, giving him a merciless beating. After the kid was bloodied and swollen, he took him to his car, telling him if he swore at his mother again, this beating would seem like it was nothing compared to the next one. But for Al Neri, his fearless temper would be the cost him dearly. 2 months after this incident, he came home from work to find his wife had left him. When Rita's father told Neri she was scared of him and his temper, he was stunned in disbelief. He never laid a hand on her or even threatened her in any way, but still, she was gone. Things wouldn't get much better for Neri, as the next day would prove to be even worse. While on his shift, Neri received a call that there was a deadly assault. As the police car pulled up and stopped, Neri jumped out hurriedly and rushed to the scene. Upon entering the hallway, a black woman said, "There's a man cutting a little girl in there." He proceeded down the hall and through the doorway, almost falling over 2 bodies on the way. One was about 25 years old, and the other was no more than 12, both bloody with razor cuts over their face and body. Once in the living room, Neri saw the perpetrator, a man he knew. The man was Wax Baines, a notorious figure known for being a pimp, dope pusher, and strong-arm artist. Neri had arrested the man just 2 weeks before assaulting one of his girls. Upon assessing the situation, Baines had looked towards Neri and told him that this had nothing to do with him, and Neri's police partner agreed. But Neri was enraged with Baines' law-breaking antics, and seeing the girl being cut up sickened him. Neri moved very quickly toward him, and Baines turned and tried to stab him with his knife. Neri's superhuman reflexes allowed him to catch Baines' thrust. With his other hand, he swung the flashlight toward the criminal, striking him in the head. The force in which Neri delivered this blow sent Baines to the floor, dropping the knife. With Baines being neutralized and helpless, there was no need for a second blow, but Neri's anger in the moment got the best of him. The second blow shattered the flashlight, sending it into pieces, and caving waxed Baines' skull in. He died just 2 hours later in the hospital. Neri was immediately suspended for this and ended up being convicted and sentenced with 1 to 10 years in prison. Al was baffled by the court's decision and now hated all of society. He believed Wax was a criminal, an animal, and that they didn't care about the women he carved up. Neri didn't fear going to prison, thinking he'd be okay and helped due to his charge and that he was a policeman. But his father-in-law knew Neri had no chance of surviving a year in there because of his temper, so he called on the only man he knew who could save the policeman. Albert Neri's father-in-law was guilty. His daughter left Al and wanted to help him. He used his contacts to get in touch with the Corleones. He paid protection to one of its representatives and supplied the Corleones with the best fish available as a gift from his fish market. But the Corleones already knew about Albert Neri and was regarded as a legendary tough cop. He garnered a reputation as a man not to be held lightly and a man who could inspire fear just from the look in his eye. Of course, the Corleones were always looking for men like that, and the fact that Neri was Sicilian was another bonus. It was Peter Clemenza who brought this affair to the attention of Tom Hagen. Hagen looked over the police dossier and said, "Maybe we have another Luca Brasi." As Al Neri was being transferred from temporary jail to prison, he was told the judge reconsidered his case and his sentence was suspended, and he was ultimately released. Neri knew it was his father-in-law who helped him out with this, so he paid his debt to him by divorcing Rita, and then went out to Long Beach to pay the Corleones their respect. Neri was surprised and gratified by the warmth in which Michael received his thanks. After the two chatted for a while, Michael offered Neri work as a hotel security man, or money to start a business. Neri denied, saying he had to stay under the jurisdiction of the court, with Michael replying he could easily fix that. The conversation finished with Neri saying if he needed help, he would get in touch. As he got up to leave, Michael told Neri to meet him for lunch and that his father wanted to meet him. During the lunch, Vito was pleased when he found Neri's parents grew up in a town just a few minutes from his own and was overall very impressed with the man. For Neri, this lunch showed that this was his home. He knew he was finally with true and sincere people, and it only took him 3 days after lunch to visit Michael and accept a new job in New York. Michael was touched by Neri's loyalty and insisted he take all expenses paid for vacation to Miami first before beginning his work. Once he got back, he was put into the Clemenza regime and was carefully tested due to him being a police officer beforehand. But within a year, Al Neri proved to be one of the finest men Clemenza taught, with Clemenza bragging that he was better than Luca Brasi. Within a year, he made his bones and never looked back. Everyone within the family knew he was a special force with his quick reflexes and coordination. Neri was directly responsible to Michael and was not a man easily controlled. In the end, Michael found his Luca, and it could be argued he was the most loyal enforcer the Corleone family ever had.